You did the budget, you tracked it, you cut things, you did what you were supposed to do. And the number at the end of the month moved by $60, maybe 80. Here's the thing, nobody will say out loud, that's not a you problem. 5% returns on $5,000 is $250 a year. There is no version of budgeting harder that fixes that math. The variable isn't your spending, it's the size of the input. And the only way to change that is to stop managing money like someone who already has a lot of it. Most people budget backwards. They spend the month, then check what survived. Zero-based budgeting flips that completely. The difference is bigger than it sounds. Here's how it works. You start every month at zero. Before a single dollar moves, you assign every dollar a destination. Income minus fixed costs, variable costs, savings, investments equals zero, not roughly zero, actually zero. Every dollar has a job before the month begins. If you've been running a regular budget, tracking categories, reviewing spending at month end, you've been doing a post-mortem. ZBB is a spending plan. One tells you what happened, the other decides what happens. The mechanics are simple. List your monthly take-home, then list everything it has to cover: rent, utilities, subscriptions, groceries, transport, debt payments. Then the things you choose to cover: savings contributions, investments, whatever discretionary spending you actually want. Add it all up. If that number is lower than your income, assign the remainder deliberately. Emergency fund, investment account, whatever. If it's higher, something has to give. Dave Ramsey built an entire financial empire on this method. Every dollar, his budgeting app, is basically ZBB in an interface. The reason it works isn't magic. It's that forced intentionality eliminates the passive leakage that swallows most people's money. The subscription you forgot about. The category you mentally underestimated. ZBB surfaces all of it. Run it for 1 month and you will know, with precise clarity, exactly where every dollar goes. That's not a small thing. Most people genuinely do not know. But here's what that clarity actually shows you, and it's not what most personal finance creators want to talk about. Run zero-based budgeting properly, fully, honestly, every category accounted for. And most people at a $50,000 to $70,000 salary end up staring at the same number. Somewhere between $0 and $300 left over at the end of the month, sometimes less. The instinct is to treat that as a spending problem, to go back through the categories, find the waste, tighten things up, maybe cut the gym membership, cook more, cancel something. And you can do that. You might find another $40 or $50, maybe $80 if you're aggressive. But here's what the budget is actually telling you. The ceiling isn't behavioral. It's structural. The gap between your income and your fixed costs, rent, insurance, transport, debt, leaves almost nothing to work with. Not because you're undisciplined, because the math doesn't have room. A 2026 Bankrate survey found that 53% of Americans don't have sufficient funds to cover a $1,000 emergency expense. That's not 53% of people being careless. That's 53% of people running a structural deficit. Income that was never going to produce meaningful savings no matter how carefully it was tracked. The budget did its job. It showed you the ceiling. The mistake is thinking the budget can also raise it. So the obvious next move, invest what's left. Index funds, compound interest, time in the market. Every personal finance creator agrees on this. And they're not wrong. Compounding is real. The math works. It just works a lot better when you have more than $200 a month to invest. Here's the number nobody puts in the thumbnail. 5% returns on $5,000 is $250 a year. That's the passive investing math at this capital level. Not a bad return percentage-wise. 5% is solid, historically accurate for a broad index fund. The problem isn't the rate, it's the base. J.L. Collins wrote The Simple Path to Wealth on the back of this exact strategy. Buy index funds, hold, don't panic, let time do the work. It's genuinely good advice For someone who already has $200,000 invested, 5% is $10,000 a year. That compounds into something that changes your life. For someone with $5,000, $250. That's one car payment. The Vanguard S&P 500 ETF has returned roughly 10% annually over the past 30 years. 10% on $5,000 is $500. On $50,000, it's $5,000. The strategy is identical. The outcome is completely different. And nobody selling you the passive investing narrative mentions the minimum capital base required for it to actually matter in your lifetime. This isn't an argument against index funds. Keep investing in them. But treating passive investing as your primary wealth-building lever at this capital level is like trying to fill a swimming pool with a garden hose. The mechanism works. The throughput doesn't. Here's the thing, though. There's a version of this where the same dollars work 5 or 6 times harder. Not through risk. Not through luck. Through one decision about what kind of asset you own. Every asset produces a return. What most people don't ask is, who's doing the work that generates it? Passive investing means someone else's. A fund manager, a property management company, a hired team. Their cut comes out of your return. That's not a complaint. It's just the math. When you outsource the operation, you pay for the outsourcing. Active ownership means you're doing that work yourself. Not all of it, not forever, but enough of it that the return reflects your involvement instead of somebody else's labor cost. A passive real estate investor, someone who puts money into a REIT or a syndicated deal, might see 5 to 8% returns. The property management company handling the day-to-day operations is capturing a piece of the upside that comes from active involvement. The investors who own and manage properties directly keep that piece. Same asset class, same market, completely different return profile, because the active owner is supplying labor that would otherwise be a cost. This principle holds across every asset type. A passive stock investor owns a tiny slice of Apple. An active content creator builds a media asset they fully control and captures 100% of the margin on every dollar it generates. A passive savings account earns 2%. An active micro-business earning on a skill the owner already has generates returns that aren't even in the same conversation. The pattern is consistent. Active ownership returns more because you're doing the work passive capital pays someone else to do. At a $5,000 capital base, that labor is worth more than the capital itself. There's a caveat. Active means active. It takes time, skill, and attention. The question isn't whether you want passive income. It's whether you can afford to wait for the capital base that makes passive income actually work. For most people watching this, the honest answer is no. Not yet. So here's what it looks like in practice. Take someone like Marcus, 33 years old, IT manager, $65,000 a year. Did everything right. Maxed his 401k, tracked his spending, ran a tight budget. ZBB told him he had about $240 a month left over after everything. He ran the math. At that savings rate, invested passively at historical market returns, he'd have enough to live off investment income at around 62 years old, 29 years away. In 2022, he bought a one-bedroom condo in a mid-tier suburb. Needed cosmetic work. Purchase price $210,000. He put $40,000 down, took a mortgage on the rest. Spent a weekend painting, hired a handyman for the bigger fixes. Listed it as a rental. Year 1. Rent, minus mortgage, insurance, property tax, and a maintenance reserve. Cash-on-cash return on his $40,000 down payment, 22%. That's $8,800 in year 1. Not because the property was special, because he was doing the 4 hours a month of management that a passive REIT investor pays a property management company to do. That management fee, typically 8 to 12% of rent, is what he kept. The caveat, it's not passive. There are tenant calls. There are months where the boiler needs replacing and the return looks a lot smaller. Year one had a 2-week vacancy that cost him roughly $900 in lost rent. Active ownership is real work. That's also why the return is what it is. The lower capital version of the same principle is the AI micro business. A system, typically a content or service operation, where AI handles the production and the owner builds and manages the system. Justin Welsh has built this exact model into a $12.5 million one-person business running at an 86% profit margin. No staff, no office. High margin because the leverage comes from systems, not headcount. The entry point is a laptop and a skill. The build time is longer than writing a check for a down payment. But margins on a lean AI-assisted content business can run at 60 to 80% once the system is built. A few hundred to a few $1,000s a month in cash flow is a realistic range for someone 12 to 18 months in, with no prior audience. More skill required than real estate. Less capital to start. Same underlying principle. You're active. The return reflects it. Two completely different assets. One involves a mortgage and a property. The other involves a browser and a consistent workflow. What they share is that the owner is operating them, not just holding them. And at a $5,000 capital base, that operational involvement is the only lever that actually moves the number. Go back to the budget. It wasn't wrong. ZBB is one of the best financial tools available. Not because it builds wealth, but because it tells the truth. Run it once, run it properly, and you will know your exact ceiling. That's valuable information. Most people spend years avoiding it. The mistake is staying in the budgeting loop after the diagnosis is done. Optimizing the same spreadsheet for the third year in a row. Finding another $40 to cut. The budget already told you what it knows. It told you the ceiling is structural, not behavioral. Listening to that means asking a different question. Not, where can I cut? But, what can I own and operate that changes the input? The NPC move, and it's an understandable one, is to keep optimizing the expense side because that's what you can control today. It feels productive. It feels responsible. But it's running the same program slightly faster and expecting a different destination. The people getting ahead at your income level aren't doing it on discipline alone. They made one decision differently. They stopped treating a small capital base the way the personal finance industry told them to, as if it were a large one with more time to compound. It isn't. Passive math on a small base is a waiting strategy, not a building strategy. The budget is the starting point. Use it. Run it. Let it show you the ceiling. Then stop looking at the ceiling and start asking what's on the other side of it.